You're saying that he's pushing rhetoric to support what his supporters are telling him. What was the rhetoric that he was pushing?
To abolish the Constitution because it was a false election.
So it's not a joke. So it's not a joke. So I don't know why you laughed at me when I said it wasn't a joke. You're a constitutionalist that voted for a person who justified terminating the Constitution, who robbed people of their constitutional rights. I need you to sit with that for a little. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rinyald. And if you disagree with anything in the video, make sure you join the Discord and we can have a chat sometime. How's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Worse and worse the more people come up. Hopefully you break the trend.
Well, I'll try, you know. I want to start with this. I want to say, if you look for terrible qualities in a person, you can always find them, you know. I also want to preface this conversation with, I don't believe in the two-party system. I think since the 1800s, when the country did turn to two-party system, it was bad for our country. It leaves you with worse and worse. But I think at the time of the election, especially this last one, Trump was definitely the better option over the two.
Okay,
but
so
I mean, we can talk about how terrible qualities of him all the time.
So I can agree that a two-party system probably isn't ideal. I would probably support like a wider party net and ranked choice voting. That'd probably be my ideal system.
Yes, 100%,
so
same here.
I can agree with that. All right, but when you say Donald Trump was by far the better option, what makes you say that? Because I feel like that's an incomprehensible statement to me.
Well, I guess it would be an opinion-based opinion. Saying
sure.
Donald Trump was the better person, but just
sure. But I mean, like we don't make
that
our
statement. I would say
we don't make our
the reason
out
why
of nothing,
I think
right?
he would exactly. So that's what I'm fixing to tell you what my political beliefs align with. But I would say I'm a constitutional conservative, not a conservative of what the Conservative Party is today. I'm not religious. I don't have most of their beliefs, but a constitutional conservative and a libertarian. And I think somebody who respects the qualities of the founding fathers of what our country is made of, Donald Trump more aligns with those ideologies than
that's funny because I mean I consider myself a constitutionalist as well, and that's like basically the whole reason why I voted against Donald Trump is because I think he spits on the Constitution every time he wakes up. So like when we have somebody like Donald Trump who like tried to steal the election that he lost and like spread public disinformation in regard to it to further try to steal the election, right? Somebody who's like robbing people of their due process rights, somebody who's revoking student visas based off of speech that he doesn't like.
On one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Can we focus on one thing? Because you said four things over there. So let's talk about the first thing you said was steal the election.
Yes.
I watched the first election I watched was the 2016. I was a sophomore at the time, and I started watching in my junior year of high school, watching all the candidates come up in 2016 and watching and develop. But I would say in the 2020, watching that election, there were definitely things that were admissible things. I'm not talking hearsay, accusatory action. I'm saying admissible things in court of clear voter ID fraud, and the notion of the Democratic. There were. I mean, if the Democratic Party is pushing notions of let's not have voter ID, that totally just bankrupts the foundations of the democratic voting system, So I would say there was lots of evidence that was showing that.
Well, so first of all, pushing, like not explicitly pushing for voter ID laws is not illegal. Like it's actually
abolishing voter ID laws would be.
No, it wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
Like if we're constitutionally minded, don't you think that the way that the election is run should be left up to the states?
I do think it should be left up to the states, but if it has a federal outcome, which the executive branch is a federal branch, it should have some checks and balances of legit U.S. citizens voting and not duplicates.
Well, do we acknowledge at that point that we're deviating from the Constitution? The Constitution explicitly says that only the states run their elections.
I would agree. I would agree on that point, but I would also say that we have Federalist Papers that tie in the federal. I mean, we all know a if you are a true libertarian, you would know a state-ran union is not productive in having some form of centralized power that can manage things like elections or defense or all the other things of the federal branches that we have, like Department of Interior, Department of Energy, and Department of all that.
Sure,
I mean,
but we
that's
agree.
just saying we shouldn't have any federalist system.
We agree that Hamilton didn't, like, it wasn't the only person that wrote the Constitution, right? Like, the Constitution holds
100%.
precedence
And
over
lots of them were
the
Federalists.
Federalist.
Well, lots of the people who wrote the Constitution and were part of the founding fathers wrote the Federalist. I mean, they were Federalists too, and they believed in that
Sure.
some sort of government that would.
But I'm saying, if the
we-
Constitution explicitly gives this power to the states, then to say that the federal government should intervene and enforce voter ID laws, even though there's nothing in the Constitution that says that that's a requirement, that's probably a violation of the Constitution, right?
I wouldn't go as far as saying the Federalist government should enforce that. What I'm saying is it's something that we should all make sure every state is abiding. I mean, not in a federal way, but I wouldn't say you have a legit election without voter ID.
I disagree that we wouldn't have a legitimate election, but I could probably agree that voter
If
ID
you don't
laws
have
are
voter
generally
ID, then
decent. Well, because you need to, you
let
still
me
need
ask
to
you this. If you
register
don't
to
have
vote,
voter
right?
ID, is that not that is voter ID, registering to vote. You'd have to
No.
have some sort of identification to register.
No, voter ID is when you show the ID when you go to vote. That's not registering to vote.
When I registered to vote, I needed to have two forms of ID
Mhm.
that proved I provided a proof of ID
Mhm.
and two forms of proof of my residency.
Yeah.
That's the action of voter registration. So that would be
Sure,
voter
but the
ID.
voter ID laws don't talk about the registration process. I'm pretty sure. I think they talk about what you show at the polling booth.
Yeah, but if what's the point in voter registration if you don't show it at the voting booth? You know, like if I can fill out a ballot without an ID, then what's the point of voter registration? That just defeats the whole point.
Well,
There's no enforcement of it.
Well, there would be enforcement. It just wouldn't be at the polling booth. If somebody voted twice, then the vote wouldn't count. They do audits and recounts, right?
So when I went to the voting booth in 2024 and I voted for Donald Trump,
Mm-hmm.
I was handed a ballot and I filled it out. After I filled it out, I scanned my ID
Mhm.
at the kiosk that was over there.
Yep.
And put the paper in.
Yeah.
That's voter ID. So I don't. So
Yes,
saying
I'm not
someone
saying
doesn't
your
need to put
state
their-
doesn't. I'm not saying that your state doesn't require voter ID. I'm saying that in cases of not having voter ID, they still audit the votes. So the idea that if you don't have voter ID, that's just going to be rampant with fraud isn't the case. They still audit the votes.
Well, then why would you push to undermine the process of voter ID? Why would you say you shouldn't have an ID while you vote? I mean, what's
The reason that people push against voter ID laws is because it costs money to get a photo ID. So we don't want to put like essentially a poll tax. We don't want to make it so low income people can't vote. Now that's why a lot of Democrats will also add the addendum that if we want to provide like free photo IDs to people, then voter ID laws would be fine, but Republicans usually push against that.
Yeah. Well,
So, but
I'm not
anyway,
Republican,
so
I'm
okay.
not going to say that funding that topic is, but I will.
So do you think that
I will
it's
concede on if you're saying. Let me say this. I will concede on that point if that was the true intention of saying voter ID should not be part of the voting process. But I think when you have,
I mean, if
that
you ask
first point
any
that you
Democrat,
made-
they'll tell you that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the. I don't think that's the genuine motive for trying to push that.
So
type
what
of
do you
policy.
think? What do you think constitutes more as like a stealing of an election between like the Democrats pushing against voter ID laws and Donald Trump using like false electors to justify the vice president violating the Electoral Count Act to bypass Congress to unilaterally choose those electors? I can go into depth. That's a very complicated. I
I'm
acknowledge that
aware
that's a
with this-
very complicated question, so I could go into depth into any of that if you want me to. But I mean, like,
I'm aware of the two cases of where he called the electors, the one in Georgia, and I forget what the second one was in the other state. I am aware of that, and that's technically
so there was 7 states
election
in which
fraud.
there were 7 states in which they assembled electors to send to the joint session on January 6th. 7 states.
I heard the 2 phone calls of the 2 cases that were admissible in his
Yeah,
congressional hearings
Raffensperger-
when they were trying to convict him.
Raffensperger
Yeah, the one from
and
Georgia, the Georgia
Bowers.
representative, and I
Yeah.
forget what the other one is. Those are the only 2 that's proven that he was on the phone call doing that with.
Well, that's
I'm
not
saying
true.
not hearsay, not things.
That's not fully true because I mean, like, we have the certificates of ascertainment that the fake Donald Trump electors sent in. We have them for all 7 states. And we know that there was coordination from Trump's lawyers and these electors to perjure themselves and call them themselves the duly
which
appointed
they
electors.
served for on their behalf, which they served for the time on behalf through 2020 to 2024, were convicted of that. But
So yeah, sure,
still,
but I'm saying like the fact that we would elect somebody who tried to steal the last election feels kind of naive, right? Like the idea that we would elect him and then he refuses to leave office and then tries to steal the election when he loses and then we expect him to leave office again or like respect the office this time. That seems naive, right?
well, I think he'll be our checks and balances. I mean, the bull crap that he always says, "Oh, I'm Trump 2028" and all that dumb shit that people who blindly follow his rhetoric also say. I don't think that'll. I think that's all just cloudy bull crap just to distract.
Sure,
I think it's
but
just
I mean,
a distraction. I don't think that's true. in
Is
any
it
way,
like
shape,
a
or form, but-
I don't find it very compelling to say that like, yeah, sure, I did vote for somebody who did try to steal the last election, but I think the guardrails are going to hold, even though last time they barely did. I think that's incredibly, and especially since one of his first actions as president was to pardon all of the people who tried to use violence to enact Donald Trump's plan. That feels, again, it just feels super naive to think that Donald Trump won't do the same exact thing this time.
Yes, but you also speak with due process, and I think a lot of the part of him that's. I mean, we can move to that topic now, but with the January 6th stuff, but I think lots of his pardon also had to do with the due process rights of them being held as political prisoners, because in most of their cases,
that's a narrative that was invented by the Trump administration, but it's not true. There was I think there were a couple lawsuits trying to contest due process rights violations, but none of them got litigated.
It's still being litigated right now. People suing the government of trying to get
the Proud Boys, but like that case is incredibly thin.
we could say that about anything without having proof of once it's decided on. But I mean, let the appeals go through to see if that's true. But at the end of the day, they were. You can't skew the fact of somebody being held in prison without giving the attempted bail based off walking into the House of Representatives. I mean, in the case
that you're talking about, so like there was no obligation for these people to be let out of prison. They were charged on time. Like in the case of the Proud Boys, it wasn't just simply them trespassing on the Capitol. It was them like literally concocting a seditious conspiracy to help Donald Trump steal the election with violence, where they were literally going through and naming the buildings that they would want to occupy in order to use it as leverage against Congress. So like it's not.
Yeah, but that doesn't attribute to Donald Trump himself. Those are people who have taken the same reason why the Klan endorses Trump doesn't mean Trump endorses the Klan. Only because the Proud Boys made the violence towards. I mean, that doesn't.
I would theoretically agree if Donald.
I'm talking about due process rights.
I would theoretically
of the prisoners that were held in prison for 2 to 3 years without the attempt of bail, without hearings.
I would theoretically agree if Donald Trump's first action was not to pardon the people that I'm talking about who are going through seditious conspiracies to try and steal the election for him. That was one of his first acts, was to pardon those people. And I mean, if you want to bring up a specific J6er and we can go through the case and I can determine whether or not his due process rights were robbed of him or not, we can. But I mean,
I don't have specific names, but I do.
Sure, and that's fine.
I did follow the story close enough.
I will say that I
saw that they spent 3 years in federal prison on that fact. But
every single case that I've seen of a J6er claiming that their due process rights were robbed of them was just not true. But
I mean, so let me ask you this: someone not getting the option for bail, sit in federal prison without a court date for 2 to 3 years, is that due process?
theoretically, yeah.
But it's theoretically, because they use the
Yeah, sure.
the words of the law.
There's a
"Oh,
lot of
we have to
there's a lot of
contemplate
things
until
that
we
would
can put them
depend
in front of
on.
a judge."
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of things that would
if
depend
somebody
on.
arrested you for DUI in your county, right, and you sat in prison for a year or two before even looking at a judge, would you feel like your due process rights and your constitutional rights are being held up if you don't even get the option to bail be in front of a
That's
judge?
the point of filing those lawsuits. But a lot of the
Exactly. And
J6ers never did
it will
file
take
those
years
lawsuits.
for that. Well, I mean, if I spent 2 or 3 years in federal prison and the federal government came after me under a hostile administration for 4 years and hunted me down because I walked through which was the majority of the people
No,
who just walked through the building without
stop
destroying
boiling it down
anything,
to just walking through. Okay, like the
then
people.
let me finish. Let me finish my point.
Okay.
Walking through or not, but if I were one of those people who are not, like you said, there's not many people bringing lawsuits again, but like that's what I was responding to that point. But if I was one of those people who just spent 3 or 4 years in federal prison fighting against a hostile administration, and I got a blanket pardon, and the FBI had gone through all my stuff, I mean, that's 3 years without income, all the people who rely on you without income, I'd probably just let it go and leave it alone. Most people don't have the time to fight the federal government, that's
If you have no income, why would you not sue for damages?
You could sue for damages, but you're going to need to find a lawyer that's willing to put his time forward to you. That's not going to be. I mean, there's
Sure, but I mean,
it
feels like we're making. It feels like we're making due process violation allegations, even though none of these people don't even make those allegations for themselves, and the ones that do.
Yeah, but my point is saying that they're not making those allegations for themselves doesn't mean that didn't happen. Because if I were in their shoes, I would.
But it doesn't mean that you can just say it did happen. We can't just claim that their due process rights were violated if there's not even an allegation of that happening. I could say that a lot of people's due process rights were violated.
Agreed. If there's not a conviction, you can't say it happened. But I would ask you this: if you were convicted, like I used the example earlier of a DUI, and you sat in jail for 2 to 3 years before you even got to see a judge to get bail, would you feel like your constitutional rights were
again? It would depend.
Infringed on. Well, that's what happened to the majority of them, and that's fact. You can look.
Okay,
you can look at their.
I'm
their
telling you, I
times.
have looked into a lot of these cases, and none of them have strong arguments for their due process rights being violated. Whereas the JGG class under the Alien Enemies Act had a very clear and obvious case of the Trump administration not only violating their due process rights, but purposefully violating their due process rights.
Well, I guess that the non-citizenry is very wishy-washy when it comes to litigation and citizenry. If you're not a citizen of the United States, and you come here illegally, your rights are that there are ways you can maneuver within the law to not give somebody the due process trial.
Yeah. So
if somebody comes here and says illegally comes here and claims asylum, asylum is a process that's supposed to be claimed in your home country.
So I don't want to be
once you cross the border.
I don't want to be too aggro, but I feel like you're falling for a lot of the narratives that the Trump administration want you to fall for, and you kind of have like this like fake kind of independence where you're independent in the claims that Donald Trump want to make, and you act like the like kind of neutered version of Trump's reality is the thing that you're in between. But right now you are very firmly in like a echo chamber right now. So like when we talk about, and I'll explain why. When we talk about due process rights, that's not simply just the right to a court and that's it. When you have due process rights, it literally just means you're going through the procedure that is laid out within the law. That's literally all due process is. So you can't have less due process rights. You either have your due process rights upheld or you don't, because those not all process is due equally to all people. So when we say that there's like some sort of controversy on whether or not illegal immigrants have due process rights, that's just not true. Like we wouldn't have any laws determining what rights certain immigrants have or don't have if they didn't have due process rights. That's the whole point of it. So there is no controversy over whether or not these people have due process rights. They absolutely do, and they were absolutely not upheld, and that was absolutely concurred with by the Supreme Court. And then when you also say that asylum seekers need to seek asylum in their home country, that's also just simply not true, and that's not even in the law. Like the INA that lays out the asylum processes literally says that you don't even need to be at a designated port of entry in order to seek asylum. You can just do it as long as you're in the country. That's a legal process for seeking asylum.
That's something that they washed down with years of democratic rule of having a democratic
no, it's
majority
not.
in Congress to add those.
That wasn't added. That was in
Those
the original legislation. That's in the Immigration Nationality Act. I think that's been that way since the 60s.
I don't think that's correct. I have to look deeper into that. But I know lots of stipulations that were made to that act were made further and enhanced upon by the other administrations, and for I think 18 years it was.
But regardless, if you're saying that
Democrats
it's
had majority congressional, like for example, I would say like one of the things that was added onto it, that app that the Democrats had people use to
CBP1,
get a court date. Yes, so that would be an example of additions to that act, and I believe that's
CBP1 wasn't a formal addition. That was just an executive order due to COVID legislation. So that wasn't added on to the Immigration Nationality Act. But regardless,
I can't tell you every congressional act that was now since the act of immigration law, but what I can say is there are additions to that act.
What I'm telling you though is that even if you are saying that this was added, let's say it was added at the end of Biden's term, that's still legal. So for you to say that it's illegal for you to seek asylum if you're not in your home country, that's just, no matter what way you cut it, that's just not true.
I'm not saying it's illegal, but I'm saying asylum seeking is for somebody who's running away from it's somebody who's in a oppressive environment that wants to move somewhere that is safer. I understand that.
If that was the case, wait. If that was the case, that asylum is just for people fleeing persecution, I agree that that's the case.
It's not just. It can be used by any immigrant. Period. But
why would you expect people to file from their home country if they're being persecuted there?
Home country or not country, any country you're in, you know what I mean? There's many, besides for the immigrants from Mexico, when you go further south to fucking Paraguay, El Salvador, any country that keeps going south from Mexico, there are more countries to come up than before just having caravans that just stream into the United States with no border enforcement. You know what I mean? There's that is clearly violating law of crossing a country's border. And you could say they were running from whatever, but there's thousands of miles between South America to.
That's not a violation of the law either. You have no obligation to
cross.
You have no obligation
border
to do that.
That's just simply not true. If you go into any other country without a passport or without consent permission, then it's just against the law.
Sure, but we're not any other country.
If I went as an American citizen and I went to any other country without my passport and it wasn't stamped, I would not, I'd be deported.
If you are seeking asylum, it is actually irrelevant if you had any other country that you could have stopped at first.
Yeah, but like I said 2 or 3 minutes ago, those asylum laws have been washed in by the Democratic Party to gain population growth.
You're making an allegation of illegality, but also saying that the Democrats changed the law to mean something different. It's either that they changed the law and it's legal, or they didn't change the law and it's illegal. But what I'm telling you right now is that it's legal. This is a legal process.
That is what I'm saying. The ideology, the reason why I voted for Trump is because of those very things that the Democratic Party has, like I said when we started on the first point that you made about voter ID, this would go back to that same ideology why I think Trump is the better option, because they have made these processes easier, and that would prove what you just said. If it is actually legal for that to happen, say it is, that would prove that it makes the process easier to have an influx of population of people that are being put on the system that would favor them towards the Democratic Party, because that's what the Democratic Party is pushing.
Realistically, this is just
conspiracy baiting.
Voter
ID, you know what I mean?
There's nothing.
That's not conspiracy baiting.
No, it is conspiracy baiting, because there's never been any Democrat coming out and saying that we're supporting immigration policy in the way that we do in order to get more voters. That's just not anything that anybody ever says, and there's reasonable reasons for people to support a more open immigration system. But if you were voting for Donald Trump in order to get a harsher harsher border legislation, then why would you do that? Donald Trump.
100% why. That's 100% why I did because
Yeah,
of his harsher
that's
border regulations.
that's naive. Once again, Donald Trump does not want any new legislation. He literally says we didn't need new legislation. We needed a new president. So if you're voting for him for new legislation, that's something explicitly that he said he's not interested in. Whereas the Democrats were reaching across the aisle for Langford.
That's
to
not
pass
true. He
his
likes
bill.
new. Maybe he said no. Let me make you clarify something. He said no legislation in the immigration area, or no legislation. Period.
No
everything.
new immigration legislation.
Well, I think he's working within his bounds to let ICE do their job, which is what the executive branch chooses to do
Well,
or not do, as we saw in the difference of 4 years. You know,
I mean, already
2024.
Already, that's
ICE
not the case
enforcing
because
the law,
Donald Trump
and
has been violating the law in order to do these deportations. I already brought up to you the Alien Enemies Act. We could bring up the third countries thing. Like, Donald Trump has not been adhering to the law in order to do these deportations to a large extent. He's been shot down on a lot of these deportations.
I think we can agree 99% of the deportations that ICE is doing is within the confines of the law. And it's something that should be done.
I don't even know if I would say that. It's absolutely not something that should be done. But regardless, if we're looking for a long-term solution,
you don't think ICE should deport?
If we're looking for a long-term solution, why would we not vote for the administration that's trying to reach across the aisle to Republicans to try and get long-term legislation passed instead of the person who explicitly says that he doesn't want new legislation?
They're simply not. There's an ideological. That's not true. There's an ideological. There's a totally opposite ideology.
The Biden administration, Biden administration was literally reaching to.
Let's speak.
Well, no, because you said that's not true. It absolutely is. The Biden administration literally committed to signing Langford's bill. Kamala Harris also committed to signing Langford's bill upon election. Langford was a Republican. He wrote them a border bill giving an asylum moratorium at a certain level of crossings. Or at a certain level of encounters. That's a right-wing bill that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both committed to signing, and Donald Trump was calling Congress people to make sure that bill didn't pass because immigration is a good election issue.
Yes, because he wanted. Yeah, exactly, and he wanted that to be something that happened. But the reason why somebody would say in the last year,
insane. To say that you voted for somebody for immigration, to say that you voted for somebody for immigration policy who was calling Congress people to vote a bill down because it's a good election issue, just shows that Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about the immigration process.
You gave me half a sec.
Yeah, you can go.
Let me finish what I was saying. Okay.
Yep.
You gave me half a sentence. You said, like you said, you put 3 different points like that, which is just, we're not honing in on it, but you're saying this bill that he did not want to complete. Yes, I would. If I was the president and if I was Donald Trump and I lost the 2020 election, I'm watching these 3.5 years of millions of people crossing the border. And then in the last 8 months, Democrats see that that's a huge issue in the primaries and the polling. They're like, yes, let's actually address polling issues, saying, oh, the Biden admin was willing to sign an was willing to sign a congressional passed act or bill that honed in on border controls is just showing that they're changing their ideology of what was the 3.5 years, which takes me back to what I wanted to say before that, saying they were trying to reach across the aisle. They weren't, because the fact of the matter is that 3.5 years, the migration that happened across the southern border and the ones that we barely didn't even track on the northern border is the fact of the matter. That is what the Democratic Party wanted, because that's what they perpetrated.
Yeah,
and
so this falls back to the narrative.
Saying that they're trying to reach across the aisle is not true, because if you let something happen for 3.5 years and in the last couple months you say, okay, yes, I'm willing to sign this bill if it goes through, making that bill signed would obviously take away. That's just switching your opinion back just the last second to say I did it under my administration to be against him is clearly provocative.
This is why people say that independents don't exist anymore. Wait, real quick, I'm getting really, really bad echo. Can you? Is there something you can?
I'm not
do
sure.
about that?
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. How's that? Is that better now?
1 2 1 2. Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So this is why people say that independents don't exist anymore. That everybody who says that they're an independent is actually just a Republican in sheep's clothing. is because you're giving me all of the Republican standard talking points, but you're just kind of
I'm not. I'm giving you the
no,
ideology of a
you are. No,
nationalist.
you're not. You are not giving us. You're not even accurately representing the Democrat ideology. The fact that Joe Biden
The
literally
Democrat ideology
Joe
is not in
Biden, Joe
fallacies
Biden,
that-
Joe Biden, Joe
Democratic
Biden.
ideology.
Please.
You said no. You're telling me
No,
something.
you're
I made-
you're
telling me I said
misrepresenting
something that was not
Joe
true.
Biden's legislative history. So I just want to tell you that Joe Biden had Title 42 in place until 2023. Right after the Title 42, he tried to sign an executive order
It does
cutting
not
off
matter if
asylum
you don't let
access.
ICE
Right?
enforce it. If you don't let ICE enforce it, it does not matter.
They literally were enforcing it. What do you think? What
On
do
very
you think
small-
Title 42 was?
Explain to me why.
What do you think Title
crossings-
42 was?
Explain to me why border crossings are 0 now, when the 3.5 years it was by him, it wasn't. Explain to me that.
Because
Doesn't
Donald
matter
Trump
what-
because Donald Trump is making America hell for immigrants. So no one has any incentive to come here when he's robbing people of their rights to get them out of the country as quickly as possible. When he's literally posting propaganda about how if you go to their immigration detention center, you're going to get eaten by an alligator. Obviously, immigrants don't want to come to this country because we're incredibly hostile towards them. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
That is so much. That is so much bullshit, dude.
Wait, how is that bullshit? Wait, tell me how that's bullshit.
Listen, I'm about to. I travel for a living. Okay. I travel for work. I was just driving down I-10 near Yuma, Arizona. Okay, just the other day, 3 weeks ago, on a job I was looking out over there. Okay, 3 years ago, I was in the same place in 2022. Okay, there's a huge difference that's there, and it's visual. Okay, I know for a fact the reason why there are no border crossings now. Not political propaganda, not Fox News. I don't watch traditional media.
I'm not saying
anything. I'm not parroting anybody's narrative. Listen.
No,
listen,
yes, you are.
I'm just putting that in there just to accentuate it because people. I'm just putting that in there just to accentuate it because people like to say that talking point because you said multiple times that I'm parroting their talking points.
You absolutely are 1,000%.
Clear eyeball evidence. Eyeball evidence. I was at the border. And I know what enforcement looks like. I live in Southern California. I know what enforcement looks like. Lots of my friends are illegal immigrants that I work with in the horse industry. I know what it looks like. And the 4 years that Biden's admin was in place, border enforcement was not being enforced.
Yeah,
it's just that
so
simple.
you are actually you're just wrong. That's the problem is you're just wrong, but I'm never going to be able to get that through to you because you saw what you saw and you think that your specific experience in Southern California represents the entire southern border. That's just not the case, and that doesn't actually map onto any of the observable realities. But before we walked off of this point, before we walked, I know you drive down I-10. That doesn't change anything. So before we walked off of this, Joe Biden had Title 42 until 2023. When it expired in 2023, he literally signed an executive order trying to suspend asylum, right? That got shot down by the courts. After that, the reach out in Congress to pass a new bill started. So there wasn't this giant downtime that Biden was doing nothing on the border. That just doesn't exist.
Okay,
so the fact that you think that Joe Biden, no, before the fact that you think that Joe Biden was doing nothing up until 2023, where all of a sudden he just clicked on and wanted a bipartisan border bill, regardless, by the way, you're literally defending Donald Trump, shooting it down for political reasons, which is insanity, saying that the immigration is such a, oh, wait, hold on. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry, my connection cut out. Sorry, my connection cut out. So saying that Donald Trump shot the border bill down for political reasons, but he was right to do it, implies that it's really not all that big of a deal.
I'm not saying it's right. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, you said no. You said didn't you explicitly say if I were Donald Trump, I would have done the same thing? Didn't you explicitly say that?
Trump, I would do the same thing after everything.
Okay, so you are justifying it. So that's what I'm saying. He's playing politics with the situation.
Morally, I think at the end of the day, if there wasn't a two-party system and all this political badgering and lying that goes on, no matter what legislation you try to pass,
you are doing the lying though. You're saying that Joe Biden wasn't reaching across the aisle. He explicitly was, and you agree that he was. He reached out to Langford to write the bill.
I agreed that he was trying once the election started coming and the numbers started coming out and they saw what the polling looked like.
Do you think those numbers weren't public?
Before that, what I said before that, polling is public. What do you mean?
Do you think the border encounter numbers weren't public prior to the election?
They were, and once it
So
comes
what do you
to
mean
election,
once
people
once
say,
the
"Why are you
numbers
not
started coming
enforcing the
out?
border?" No, I said polling numbers. Once the polling numbers starting coming out, and you see that a border is a big issue for the American public, immigration is a big issue for the American public. You start enforcing it in your last year of your administration.
Sure,
That's what I was saying.
that just
Let me
doesn't
take
map
it back.
on to what Joe
Let me take
Biden
it
did,
back.
though. Joe Biden was
It
doing action
does.
on the border for his entire presidency. It's just that people only pay attention to any action surrounding the election.
Action is what happens at the border. What happens in legislative Congress? You and I both know.
I don't know where this narrative was invented that he wasn't enforcing the border laws. That's just not true. SCOTUS literally have to shoot him down on trying to re-up Title 42 again?
Can we agree that there was millions of people in the last 4 years, I think it was close to 6 or 7 million, that illegally crossed the southern border?
No, that 6 million number you're citing isn't even crossings. It was encounters.
Why would an illegal immigrant be on the opposite side of a border? What's that citing?
6 million people weren't on the opposite side of the border.
Sorry, on the American side of the border, a sighting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. These encounters were not crossings. You get counted as an encounter if you get turned around.
Exactly. Why would they be on? Why would they even be encountered to be turned around? Explain
because
to me
Border
why
Patrol
Trump's
came
admin
across
has
them.
Turnarounds because they don't even
because
get past
no
the
one
gate.
wants to come here. No one wants to come here.
That's such a lie.
It's not a lie. Why would can you tell me why an immigrant would want to come to the US right now?
The wages high, like
wages
you're
are not that high. So
you're talking to some. Listen.
Mm-hmm.
When I said wages is high, I meant in the comparison of the Spanish, the Mexican peso, back in opposite to the American dollar. They come here to work. You're talking to somebody who works with immigrants, Mexican immigrants, and illegal immigrants. Okay, I know they want to come here. They have told me they want to come here. I am friends with many of them. Okay?
Do you think they would try to come here when ICE is doing incredibly harsh crackdowns right now? When he's signing executive orders to when he's signing executive orders to rob people's due process rights from them? When he's signing executive orders to, I literally just explained to the last caller exactly how that happened. When he's revoking people's student visas for their First Amendment rights?
You explained to the last caller of the 300 cases that went through the judiciary court that was ruled that he was being unconstitutional and it was turned out against, okay?
So if he violated 300 people's due process rights, if they're doing incredibly harsh ICE crackdowns, when he's posting things about how if you come here, you're going to get fed to alligators, when he's revoking people's student visas for their First Amendment protected speech, why the fuck would anybody want to come here?
You made 3 points, but we're going to go with the 4. You made 4 points.
To go with the first, that's what I say. You're slamming things at me, and then when I try to respond, you interrupt me. But what I'm saying is,
you're interrupting me too, buddy. But it's okay.
You're right. I'm also doing it because I'm trying to stop you during a point because you're going 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? I'm trying to address one thing at a time so we can actually have productive conversation. But at the end of the day, it is fact. And I don't know how we disagree with this. It is fact that if you don't think millions of people cross the border at the southern border, you're lying to yourself. Because the fact of the matter, go look at the numbers. The fact of the matter is
the numbers that you're citing to me aren't saying what you think the numbers are saying. You cited to me encounters as examples of people crossing the border. That's not what this is.
Not a crossing.
No, an encounter is not a crossing.
If an ICE agent encounters an illegal immigrant on American soil at the border, that is a crossing, is that not?
No, it's not a crossing if they turn them around.
If they turn them around and they come back 2 days later, do you think when you turn them back, they're going to trek 100 miles, 200 miles?
You are explaining to me why encounters are a dog shit metric. Because if a Border Patrol agent turns somebody around and then they come back to the border and they turn them around, that's 2 encounters.
Why do you think the encounters?
So you're citing 6 million encounters to me as if they're crossings. That's not the case.
I'm gonna tab out for a second so I can give you concrete numbers because you're not happy with this number that I just gave you. So I'm gonna tab out, which is not gonna let me speak. But I'm gonna give you a concrete number of how many illegal people came across the southern border in the last 4 years. During the Biden.
That's an almost impossible number to give.
You can give a guesstimation, and I'm telling you, it is way higher than during Trump's administration. And I think we can both agree on that.
I agree that it's higher. I agree that it's higher under Biden than it was in Trump. Well, we're agreeing. I'm telling you. Well, no, because you're going to make a point that doesn't correlate to what I believe. I'm not contradicting that the crossings under the Trump administration were not lower than under Biden. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so then let's agree to disagree as to why immigration is not at an influx during Trump's admin. But at the end of the day, it's still a proof that it aligns with my ideology that I don't want millions of undocumented illegals coming across the border.
Sure, in the same way that if we like daily flogged an illegal immigrant, if we cut them open and then paraded them through the streets, that would also pretty drastically plummet crossings. But that's not what we want. That's not a good thing.
That doesn't happen. The same way in policing, there are very few instances that United States people with a police license that enforce the law do unjust things. The same thing's going to happen with ICE enforcing.
What I'm telling you, I'm not saying that that's what's happening. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm saying that if we were to do that, border crossings would plummet. But I don't want to do that. That's not a good thing. So I don't know why we're citing like encounters being low as a statistic that's somehow intrinsically favorable when the way that we're doing that is by treating people incredibly inhumanely.
I don't think we're treating people incredibly. You're saying that Biden tried to enforce the border law, right? Trump
Yes.
is actually enforcing the border law. So
No. Donald Trump is not enforcing the border law. He's breaking the border laws. He literally signed an executive order to suspend asylum.
He overstepped on an order.
That's a violation of the law. So don't pretend like Donald Trump is here. Don't pretend like Donald Trump. No. Don't pretend like Donald Trump is here to enforce the border law. That's not true.
Yes.
He's here to get immigrants out. He's not here to enforce the law. He's not doing this for enforcement of the law.
That's exactly what people with nationalists and constitutionalists and conservatives with their ideology.
No, it's not. It's not. It's no. It's not. You can't call yourself a constitutionalist and then vote for the person who literally said he wanted to terminate the Constitution. That's absurd.
I don't believe him saying I want to abolish the Constitution means he actually wants to. He ran on a libertarian platform under the Republican Party because
as a constitutionalist, how did you vote for somebody who said he wanted to terminate the Constitution?
the same way he says other provocating statements. I don't think when he I know that Donald Trump, within his actions of what he does for the American people, he's not trying to destroy the Constitution. Okay, that's
when he's robbing due process rights, or when he's like trying to make flag burning illegal.
When he is overstepping bounds,
his constitutional bounds.
When he is, let me finish what I'm saying. When he's overstepping legislation, when he's making executive orders that are being overturned by the judiciary, by the judicial branch, that is something that they are there for. If he wrote something that Trump has an admin of 10,000 people, okay? He has lawyers to advise him what he can and cannot do. When he writes something,
those lawyers are all yes men. One of the biggest problem with Donald Trump's administration right now is that he's only appointing people for their loyalty. He's not appointing people for their merit. We can look at that with RFK. We can look at that with Tulsi Gabbard. We can look at that with Hegseth. He's not appointing people because they're qualified. He's appointing people because they're yes men. If he wasn't appointing people because they're yes men, why would he appoint Rudy Giuliani to be the person to lead his re-election campaign?
That's just as alleged as me saying my conspiracy of population transfer.
No, that's not just as alleged.
That is.
What qualifications do you think RFK has?
RFK is obviously had enough convincing powers to get that far in the polls that he did, and obviously Trump.
Why does that make somebody qualified to lead the Department of Health?
When
being persuasive doesn't matter.
When somebody has good ideas of policies they want to promote, of things that have gone out there, they've gone out there and researched policy and they promote it in an election, and they get this far and they get certain amount of people that push them that far and that amount of donors. That's obviously influence of people who want to trump his policy. We don't have good legislation.
What were RFK's good health ideas? Other than the fact that maybe COVID was bioengineered to spare the Jews. What were his good health ideas?
You accuse me of conspiracy.
No. He literally explicitly said that. That's not a conspiracy. That's a direct quote from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I'm going to go back to my point I was trying to make.
Wait. No. Don't accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist, okay? That is something that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said. I asked you a question. Other than him saying that, what great health ideas did RFK have to be incredibly qualified to lead the Department of Health?
Like I said, I was about to try to make that point. Like I said, what I was going to say before, we both know there's not good politicians aren't good well, for the majority of them. All the people that are in Congress, they're not brilliant legislators that know all of this. They are people who are able to conjure a following to get elected in a position. They're not the best person for their job.
Those aren't the people that are supposed to be heading the three-letter agencies.
Those are the people who do. Who do you think Biden admin elected to? When you say people are saying yes men, who do you think Biden elected to be head of those three-letter agencies? And I don't care about the FBI.
Do you think Merrick Garland was a yes man? Do you think Merrick Garland was a yes man?
Let me finish what I'm saying. You said that Donald Trump is putting yes men in those positions. Mm-hmm. I don't even care about who Biden put in the position of the FBI to go after Trump. I'm not going to even talk about that. But when you talk about gun legislation, which is a huge thing for me, and you promote people who enforce non-legislative bodies like the ATF to go enforce things that Congress did not sign into law, is by definition putting yes men in those positions. So don't tell me that Donald Trump is putting yes men in three-letter agencies.
So just out of curiosity,
because let me finish
what do you think? What do you think speaks more? Well, because you already made your point. You already made your point. I thought we were going one by one. I thought we were going one by one.
Go ahead. You're right. I didn't make my point. I wanted to expand on it, but never mind.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, which do you think speaks to this person being a yes man more? Somebody like Joe Biden appointing Merrick Garland, who opened a special prosecutor to investigate him for the classified documents and opened an investigation into his own son, or somebody like Donald Trump appointing somebody like Pam Bondi. Do you think Pam Bondi would ever appoint a special counsel for Donald Trump?
To address your first point, the same train of logic of the reason why I think Biden would put forth legislation to pretend that he is enforcing border policies is the same reason why, when there's enough attention of your son doing coke in Ukraine and files of a picture of your files that the FBI found in your garage, when there's enough headline attention to that, obviously transparency is the next way to go.
Okay, do you think that Donald Trump was going to promote that level of transparency? He's had a ton of things that could be criminally prosecuted by now. Do you think Pam Bondi is ever going to appoint a special counsel for him? Do you think she would ever do something like that?
That's all alleged. Do I think? Do I not think? I think the actions...
But that's a valuable question, though. If we're talking about who we think are yes men, do you think that Pam Bondi would ever appoint a special counsel to investigate Donald Trump?
100%, I would. The same way I think.
You're just lying. That's incomprehensible.
So explain to me then why. If you think that Pam Bondi is a yes man, explain to me why that the three-letter agencies like the ATF crack down on gun control things that are unconstitutional, which are being overturned day by day by the justices right now with a congressional backing. Tell me how Pam Bondi is a yes man, how those folks that led the ATF and the FBI that went to do all this researching to persecute law-abiding citizens that had their guns, how that isn't yes men.
We're talking, when I say yes men, I mean people who will not disagree with Joe Biden. So these people doing this thing that aligns with Joe Biden's policy goal, I would expect that, okay? But I would also expect that somebody who is in Biden's administration would be willing to tell Joe Biden no on a thing, okay? And we have evidence of that because we had who the fuck was the health specialist under Joe Biden? They came out against certain things that Joe Biden wanted to do. I already named you the example of Merrick Garland literally appointing a special counsel to investigate him criminally.
That's transparency after the fact of the media putting so much attention.
Yeah, Pam Bondi wouldn't even do that. Why do you think they dismissed the charges against Eric Adams? Why do you think they dismissed the charges against Eric Adams?
Why did he dismiss the charges against rappers that have clearly been part of RICO rings? I don't fucking know. It's probably
Why do you think
a popularity thing?
No, it's not a popularity thing. Everybody hates Eric Adams. The reason that Eric Adams' charges got dropped was because somebody within the DOJ, I'm pretty sure at the direction of Donald Trump, gathered all of the people within the DOJ and they said, you are going to sign this letter to dismiss his charges or you're fired. And we have that. We know that happened. That's what I'm talking about when I say yes, men.
I think we clearly, I think we have the same. Tabbed out. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have the same thought process when it comes to things. You're just and I think you have very similar ideology with me, but you're only applying biases.
No.
To
the
other side.
I'm sorry.
Taking those same biases and applying it to your side.
No, that's absolutely not true. To claim like I'm biased, to claim like I'm biased, where I had to, I literally had to explain to you like all of the different controversies, exactly how Donald Trump went against your constitutional rights, and I don't even think you disagree with me on any of the material there. Like, what materially did I say that Donald Trump violated our constitutional rights on that you disagree with me on?
Sorry, say that again?
When I say Donald Trump violated our constitutional rights, what case do you even disagree with me on?
I don't think Donald Trump violated our constitutional rights. When did we speak about that? The only time we spoke
in the
about
case of the due process rights, in the case of robbing people's right to vote in the 2020 election.
The due process. Wait, let's stop over there. We'll talk about the election in just a second. The due process rights, the immigrants we already spoke about. We already covered.
No, we didn't actually speak about that. You conceded the whole conversation by saying, yeah, maybe their due process rights were violated because the Supreme Court said so, but so were the J6ers. And I talked exactly about how I looked at the J6ers cases and their due process rights were not violated.
No, I concede. You misrepresent my concession. I conceded because I said we clearly see it different, where you see he violated people's constitutional rights. I see he's strictly trying to enforce border policy, and he overstepped with that advisement. That's what I thought.
So when you say he overstepped, you're literally just more politely framing the exact same thing. What do you mean he overstepped? What did he overstep?
The justices did the check, ruled, and
what did he overstep?
If the justices ruled that it was a constitutional infringement, then I believe it was a constitutional infringement.
Okay, so then I didn't misrepresent. Then I didn't misrepresent at all. Then it was a violation of the Constitution.
No, you're saying I conceded. You're saying I conceded because I could not, because I believe that he did purposefully violate our constitutional rights of due process. That's not what I believe. What I believe is that he was strictly trying to enforce border policy, and the checks and balances were put in place against his executive orders.
Okay,
and that's the outcome of it.
I don't think that there is a difference there. So you don't believe that he was actively trying to violate their due process rights?
Do you think Trump knows every? I'm going to counter that question with a question. Do you think Trump knows every legality when it comes to constitutional rights?
My answer to that is, if Donald Trump thought that what he did with the alien enemies flight would constitute due process rights, then he's insane. When his ICE agents were literally reassuring the people on the planes that they would get to talk to a lawyer, and then they never let them do it. Why do you think they were doing that?
And I think that the 1934 Act of the NFA, even though it's illegal, it's also insane, but it's legal nonetheless. Okay?
No, this was illegal. It was already ruled illegal. So when Donald Trump's administration was rounding people up on planes saying you'll be able to talk to a lawyer, and then they never give them the opportunity to talk to a lawyer, you don't think that shows some level of intentionality?
No, Donald Trump's border agents enforced his policy. If you come here illegally, you're going to be deported because it's against the law.
So no, it was for the Alien Enemies Act, right? So this was wartime authority. Okay, so why do you think they told them that they would be able to talk to a lawyer if they didn't think they had the right to talk to a lawyer?
You're saying people said things that they were going to be going to see a lawyer when he obviously was enforcing where they ruled against him was that he didn't give them a hearing, which what
No,
he
that
argued
they didn't give them due
he-
process rights. Yeah, not
process
necessarily a
rights.
hearing. Yeah.
Yes, but that's part. At the end of the day, an immigrant wants to get a hearing so they can be told, come back in 6 or 7 years.
Sure, but you don't even need a
to
hearing
finish
there.
this process. No, it is being. Oh my God.
I'm saying their due process rights don't even necessitate a hearing. So the bar that you're setting as they need a hearing, that's not even true. That's not even the bar that incredibly low bar isn't even the one that Donald Trump fell under.
That's
So
what
I'm
that's
just
what
asking.
when you are
why would the agents
obviously now we have to go through the rights of due process because now you're misrepresenting things.
No,
'Cause
I'm
you're
not
saying that-
misrepresenting. The only right to due process that you have under the Alien Enemies Act is some sort of ability to challenge you're an alien enemy. That's it. Donald Trump didn't even provide that. So my question is if they thought
Agreed,
they were
and I'm
complying,
trying- and
if
I'm
they
trying to
thought they were
expand on-
complying with the due process rights, why would they assure them that they would be able to talk to a lawyer that they never got the opportunity to talk to?
Like I said,
Why
I'm
would they
trying to
lie?
explain
Why
that.
would they lie to the people
Well,
that they were deporting?
There's hours of congressional hearings that you could see other people making that same argument against why they shouldn't be able to have due process rights. Okay, and the fact
No, that doesn't answer because they do have those rights under the Constitution that you claim to support. So why do you think that the people were lying to the immigrants that were being deported about seeing a lawyer when that would never be afforded to them? Why would they need to lie about it?
Okay, now I have to move to something else you said because you're saying I'm supporting a constitutional right of something that I don't believe my ideology goes against, but you're saying because it was passed through in legal ways and it makes it that's just you're using
No,
something.
I'm saying due process rights are enshrined in the 14th Amendment. That's all I'm saying.
Which was expanded upon, which we also already spoke about. But now
What do you mean the 14th Amendment was? You can't expand upon the 14th Amendment outside of another amendment.
How you interpret it? How you interpret? Now we have to go to a whole different legislative.
The legislative has nothing to do with this.
The enaction of laws of how you enforce and use amendments to make bodies of government, that is legislation. That's how that's expanded.
The words that you just said there didn't combine into a sentence. I'm saying that these people have a 14th Amendment right as held under, I think it was Ludecky v. Watkins in like 1930. So if you're saying that was expanded too far, then maybe we can have that conversation, okay? But they have a right to challenge. They have a right to.
I told you in 1934 the NFA Act is something I don't agree with. I wasn't around in 1934. It's something that goes against my ideology.
I'm not talking about a piece of legislation. I'm talking about a Supreme Court case, okay? So
I'm not talking about the Supreme Court case you're saying. I'm talking about a example of you're saying I'm being you're trying to say that I am a constitutionalist. So why am I not in agreement with what they're enforcing and what is the law when I've already told you there are laws that exist today that I do not agree with? My ideology.
Sure, the law in this case that you don't agree with is the 14th Amendment, which is in the Constitution, buddy.
I've already told you I agree on that, and I've also said.
So do you disagree? Do you disagree with the 14th Amendment?
I don't disagree with the 14th Amendment. What I'm saying is the way that he tried to enforce border policy was stricter than what was constitutionally.
No, not stricter, illegal, and they lied about it. So it's going back to the same question that I was asking that I didn't get an answer to. So when the people on the plane were promising the immigrants that they would get a chance to talk to a lawyer, if they thought that they were upholding the due process rights legally, why would they promise that?
You already know my answer because of what my ideology is.
No, I don't know your answer. Why would they promise that?
I don't know that they promised that. I know that it happened because that's what's been proven is that it happened. I don't know that they promised that and they said, "Oh, you'll get to go talk to a lawyer."
They did say that. Assuming that they did say that, why do you think they said that?
Because they were trying to deport him without giving them a hearing, which is unconstitutional. Like you said, I'm already agree. We're talking.
So they purposefully violated the constitutional rights. So I don't know why beforehand you were talking about, oh, well, Donald Trump just overstepped. He just kind of played fast and loose. No. That's not what happened. They rushed them onto the plane as quickly as possible, lied to them that they would be able to enact their due process rights, and they never did. It was purposeful. And that's why they were also sending flights out while the TRO hearing was going on.
Exactly, because there's an ideological argument as to why that shouldn't be a case.
Ideological argument was that I should transcend the rights that these people are given through the 14th Amendment. This was bad faith. If it wasn't bad faith, they wouldn't promise people the right to talk to a lawyer.
At the end of the day, like I said, I know what I've already said. I agree with what you're saying, that it was against the Constitution. I've also tried to say many times that if somebody crosses the border illegally and you send them back right away and they claim asylum, I don't think that is a productive way.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't track on to what I'm saying. I'm saying that Donald Trump made active bad faith effort to rob these people of their due process rights.
Exactly, because they didn't get the
right. So how can you be a constitutionalist when you voted for somebody who did that, when you're still supporting somebody who did that, and when you voted for somebody who said he wanted to terminate the Constitution? You're not a constitutionalist.
I am. Give me one. Let me tab out and look at when the 14th Amendment was made, because when I say I'm a constitutionalist, I'm a libertarian. I believe in the freedoms that are of the freedom of the construct of what our Constitution provides for our citizens. Okay, when illegal immigration,
the 14th Amendment isn't in the Constitution.
I know the 14th Amendment is in the Constitution. Let me expand on what I'm saying. Okay, you get me off track by you're moving to things that you already know that I agree with, okay? Because you're running me around in circles. But like I said, what I'm trying to say is...
Well, why would it matter when the 14th Amendment was ratified?
It's the same reason why I referred back to the 1934, and I know you're going to say it's legislation, it's not Constitution. My ideological premises is that I think the way if millions of people come across this border and we give everybody a hearing and we plug up the system for 8 years, it's not a productive way to handle a border crisis. If you want to say that makes me not a constitutionalist, then we're going to have to agree on that. I'm going to disagree with you.
No, I'm not saying that that's not why you're a constitutionalist. I agree with that, but I actually voted for the person who wanted to pass the bill to allocate more judges to actually be able to hear these cases quicker, to actually cut down on wait times, instead of just robbing people of their due process rights to get them out as quickly as possible.
You know how
I'm saying that you're not a constitutionalist because you voted for the person who willingly and bad faithfully violated these people's constitutional rights, and you're defending it.
I voted for someone who I thought the way he's handling the border is a good policy. Okay.
Yeah, and the way that he's handling the border is violation of rights.
Violation of rights of people that I don't think should be coming across by the millions. Okay, and if you want to call me
that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
It matters to me because
you are justifying violating the Constitution. I hope you know. You're a constitutionalist who voted for somebody who wanted to terminate the Constitution, who's justifying violating the Constitution. You're not a constitutionalist.
No, we already spoke about that part. I don't think he actually wants to abolish the Constitution.
He said it.
Yeah, Biden also said the N-word on the House of Representatives in the 1980s. Okay, you voted for him.
Wait, did I? What do you think's worse, saying the N-word in the 90s or saying I want to terminate the only governing document that gives me all of my power? What's worse?
Do you think that I think he
said
that in jest, or do you think that I think he said that in jest, or if he was serious about that?
I'm just asking what's worse.
Obviously, if somebody genuinely said they want to get rid of the Constitution, I would think that's a bad thing. But I don't think he said that.
So
when provocative thing.
So when he said it, do you even know the example of him saying it? Do you even know the example of him saying it that I'm referring to?
I've seen clips of all sorts of shit he said. I'm sure I've seen that.
Don't you think that it's kind of important as a constitutionalist to know if you're voting for somebody who even made a joke about terminating the Constitution when he's coming in as the president?
I've seen those clips. Okay, I've just said that.
So if you've seen the clips, you would know that he's not joking. If you saw the clips, you would know he's not joking.
That's not true.
So what did he say? What did he say?
I can't verbatim quote him right now.
Okay, I'll tell you. So
Something that
I don't know why you're
2 days
laughing
ago.
at me for my characterization when I know what he said, okay? He said that a massive fraud would justify the termination of the Constitution. Now, refresh my memory. Did Donald Trump say that there was massive fraud in the 2020 election?
Yes.
Okay. Does he think
Millions
that
of
the
times.
remedy would be rerunning the election?
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
Okay. Did he say
What I
that?
saw-
Did
I
he say
saw-
a massive fraud would justify
already-
the termination of the Constitution to rerun the election? Does that sound like a joke? Even though he believes the other two things?
That is him moving he is moving rhetoric. He is preaching rhetoric to support what his supporters are telling him. Okay.
Wait. No, because we're talking so vaguely to actually escape from any accountability. What rhetoric is he pushing? What is he asking to do?
When his I supported him in the 2020 election. I supported him in the 2016. And I also supported him in 2024.
Yeah,
I think there was
I believe
voter
it.
ID fraud. Okay.
I'm not asking you if you think there was voter ID fraud. You said that he's pushing rhetoric.
Line of questioning.
No, I'm asking you a very direct question. You're saying that he's pushing rhetoric to support what his supporters are telling him. What was the rhetoric that he was pushing?
To abolish the Constitution because it was a false election.
So it's not a joke. So it's not a joke. So I don't know why you laughed at me when I said it wasn't a joke. You're a constitutionalist that voted for a person who justified terminating the Constitution, who robbed people of their constitutional rights. I need you to sit with that for a little. Jesus.
Crazy.
Thank you, Caden, for the roses, by the way.
Yellow diamonds look like PP.